Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Commander Showcase. Today we are looking at a deck that can have not one, not two, not three, but four different commanders, that being Spider-Man 2099, aka Miguel O Hara, which could also run Ultimecia, Temporal Threat, Grazilax, Ithalid Scholar, aka Squidward, Sarcastic Snob, and the Indomitable. The entire deck strategy of here relies on all of these guys' second ability, which is whenever, for Miguel and Squidward, it is going to be whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Ultimecia and the Indomitable have a slightly better version of this ability, as it is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. It's all about getting value out of swinging unblockable creatures. As you can see, there's 21 options here that we have for Showcase here. But they all have their own benefits for it. The Indomitable is going to be able to avoid creature removal, as the fact that it is a vehicle that you need a crew in order to allow it to swing in. You have Squidward, which returns blocked creatures to your hand. There are a couple of creatures that are blockable, but that will protect Squidward's other creatures from being blocked and being removed. And then Ultimecia can kind of be a bit of an ultimate here, as she taps all creatures your opponents control. Meaning you could take a bunch of creatures and swing them wherever you want with absolutely no worry about it. And then Miguel bounces a creature to its owner's hand. You could do this with one of your own creatures for an ETB effect, or you can just bounce something threatening from an opponent's hand. We're going into our unblockable creatures. Most of these creatures are all just given the ability to be unblockable. With a few exceptions, there is Looter Ilkor, Thalicos Scout, Thalicos Seer, and Thalicos Deceiver, which all have Shadow as opposed to unblockable. However, the difference between the Shadow and being unblockable is that creatures with Shadow can only be blocked or block other creatures with Shadow. And Shadow's not very common, so it's very easy to essentially have a bunch more unblockable creatures. Plus, some of these creatures have other abilities that make them really, really interesting, such as Thalicos Deceiver, which you could sacrifice it to gain control of a target creature, and you can only use this ability if Thalicos Deceiver is unblocked, aka whenever it attacks. There's also Thalicos Seer, which draws you a card when it gets destroyed, or whenever it leaves play. Thalicos Scout, you could discard a card to return it to your hand, allowing you to flicker it if you have an opponent who somehow has Shadow and blocks it. Looter Ilkor will be able to draw us a card at the cost of discarding a card, but honestly, we're drawing so many cards that even if we have to discard one card, we really aren't in any issue. Other than that, it's mostly just those creatures unblockable, such as like Latch Seeker, Phantom Warrior, Nurok Invisimancer. But there are some that have other effects. Nurok Invisimancer does also have another ability to make another target creature unblockable for the turn, able to kind of help us get a little bit more assistance on our field for our non-unblockable creatures. There's Gilded Scuttler, which taps a creature an opponent controls, put a stun counter on it when it enters. Veteran Ice Climber makes a target player mill cards equal to its power. Vidalcan Infiltrator and Grey Harbor Merfolk both get different buffs. Grey Harbor Merfolk gets it if you control a commander, and Vidalcan Infiltrator gets it if you control 3 or more artifacts. On that, it's mostly just the same basic stuff: Slitherblade, Triton Shorestalker, Mistcloaked Herald, stuff like that. Then you also have Silent Hull Creeper, which can essentially become a copy of another creature, likely an unblockable one, but you can have it have 2+1/+1 counters on it, as whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you choose one that has been chosen. You can either put 2 counters on it, draw a card, or make it become a copy of another creature you control. And with Thalicos Deceiver, you could even make a copy of a creature that an opponent controls by gaining control of it, which is going to be a really useful ability. With how much damage we're going to be throwing out, we do want a bunch of effects from the damage. Most of these are card draw effects, such as the Indomitable, Squidward, Coastal Piracy, Reconnaissance Mission, and Biden of Thassa. But we also do have a couple other effects. We have Bloodforged Battle Axe, which makes a copy of itself whenever the creature equipped with it deals combat damage to a player. Gold Vein Pick creates a treasure token whenever you deal combat damage to a player. Kaito gets loyalty counters whenever a creature control deals combat damage to a player. And during Curiosity also draws you cards. But the important ones here are the Quietus Spike and what we just mentioned with Kaito. Quietus Spike is a equipment that has equip 3, gives a creature Death Touch. But that's not the important part, as again, our creatures are unblockable, so it doesn't really matter. But whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life, rounded up. Meaning, we are going to be able to do a lot of damage, even with our creatures that are 1/1, that are 1/2, 2/1s, 2/2s. Like, we're attacking with a lot of really weak creatures. In effect, Grey Harbor Merfolk is literally a 0/3. So we're definitely getting a lot of value out of Quietus Spike if we're able to get some damage in with it, which is going to be pretty easy. Kaito, on the other hand, is mostly usable for his ultimate here, which is you get an emblem with whenever a player casts a spell, you create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token. This is going to combo in with, like, playing Kaito right before your combat, swinging in 6 creatures to deal combat damage. You get 6 loyalty counters on Kaito, and then you get a bunch of 2/1 ninjas, which is just going to be really useful. But you can also create a token for its -2, and for +1, you can draw a card and discard a card, and make a creature unblockable for the turn. Speaking of drawing cards, we do have a bunch of creatures that benefit from drawing. Most of these are on the second draw of the turn, such as Mischievous Mystic, Thopter Fabricator, Homunculus Horde, Emrakul's Messenger, stuff like that. But for these ones, these are all, like, essentially creating tokens. Emrakul's Messenger makes Eldrazi spawns, which you could sacrifice for additional mana. Thopter Fabricator will create a Thopter artifact creature token. Mischievous Mystic will make a blue fairy with flying. Homunculus Horde will make copies of itself. And then we also have our every card draw effects. Onirophage, Calinquent Skymage, Chasm Skulker, Lila, and Wizard class all will put +1/+1 counters on it. Nadir Kraken, you have to pay a mana to get that effect, but you also make a token every time as well. Lila will put a +1/+1 counter on any target creature, not just itself. Whereas Chasm Skulker, Calinquent Skymage, and Onirophage will all put a +1/+1 counter on themselves. Wizard class also does the same thing on Lila, which does in fact take a lot of mana to get to, but it also gives us no maximum hand size, so even if we don't get that level 3 ability on, its level 1 ability is just a good one to have just on the field to begin with. With that, though, we do need a lot of protection here. Most of these are counter spells. We have Cancel, Refute, Long River's Pull, Disallow, Arcane Denial, and Counterspell, as well as Stubborn Denial, all for just targeting any spell. But we also do have Negate and Spell Pierce, as well as that's it, and Stubborn Denial, which all kind of counter non-creature spells, which are going to be really useful for when our opponents are trying to remove our creatures. Siren Storm Tamer will also counter a target spell or ability that targets myself or a creature that I control. Other than that, though, it's a lot of bouncing back to hand, or not really a lot of, it's some bouncing to hand. We have Unsummon, which just returns target creature to its owner's hand. Snapback, which we could play for free by exiling a blue card from our hand, which also bounces a creature back to its owner's hand. Fumble is going to be the really interesting one here, as we return the creature to its owner's hand, but we also gain control of all auras and equipment that were attached to it, and we attach them to one of our other creatures. I mean, if we're playing against Voltron, being able to cast this for 2 mana and steal their commanders' auras and equipments at instant speed before they can finally get some protection on it, it allows us to kind of play around that big swing that would come our way. Speaking of big swings coming our way, Dissipation Field is our other big protection. Whenever a permanent deals damage to you, you return it to its owner's hand, essentially allowing us to bounce back any creatures that swing at us, particularly Voltrons, as well as just other big armies and stuff. We can take a decent hit, but then we essentially reset our opponent. It's just really good protection for us, allowing us to be a little bit more aggressive and get our card draw. With that, though, that is the deck. Quite a quick one today. We have some very basic mana sources here. We do have stuff like Commander Sphere and Mind Stone for the card draw as well. There's Heraldic Banner to give our creatures some buffs that they desperately need. We also have Silvermere for an extra blocker if we don't need the mana. So there's definitely some other tricks you can pull with this deck. You can lean in more one way, you can lean in the other way. But I think that the main way that I built this deck, using unblockable creatures to just essentially draw our deck, works really well. Another way you can run this is stuff with like Thassa's Oracle and mill effects, such as Psychic Corrosion and Jace's Erasure. You can run those two. Draw a bunch of cards, make your opponents mill a bunch of cards, which can allow you to, or with Jace's Erasure, you can mill yourself, play Thoracle, win the game that way. You can also run something like Something Conscious. I'm blanking on it right now. It'll probably pop up right here on screen for you if I remember what it is. And you can win through Infect, especially if you can get something like the Indomitable through for free with something like Ultimecia. Being able to tap everything, or if you have a card that gives buffs, like if you have a bunch of Bloodforged Battle Axes on something like a Blighted Agent, you can get some easy kills that way. I just wanted to make this kind of more of just a combat-heavy deck in a color that isn't typically known for its combat prowess. Mostly known for its control and card draw, which it does use a lot of card draw, but also like spell slinging effects, which other than our counter spells, there really isn't a whole lot of spell slinging to be had. It's mostly about protecting our creatures, getting some extra value out of them, and trying to draw our deck to get more creatures out. It's definitely a much lower bracket compared to the decks I've built before, but that is kind of the goal of this series, is to make kind of lower budget, beginner friendly decks on a budget. Mind you, this is an $80 deck, but that's solely because of Miguel here, who is $30. You take this out, that's $50. You could easily replace him with something like the Indomitable as your commander. This would probably be the one I would go for, is the Indomitable. But Grazilax is another great one, as he is the cheapest of the 4. And even though you only can get a max of like 3 card draws every turn, he provides a lot more safety for your team, especially for like the ninja tokens we'd be getting from Kaito and stuff like that. allowing us to swing in a bit more safely. There's also stuff like Chasm Skulker and Clinquant Sky Mage and stuff that would need that protection if they were to be blocked. We can bring them back for Grazlax. But then again, also Ultimecia can help them get through if you have other effects like the Indomitable, Grazlax, or Miguel out on the field. So, like, these 4 in a combo are just really strong, especially since that's a lot of card draw throughout a turn. And you can definitely build this a lot stronger. I'm not saying that this is, like, really strong. Again, I would think that this is probably, like, really low bracket 2. Or maybe not really low, like, kind of middle ground bracket 2. But what's bringing it back is that there's not really a big win con for it. Like, there's definitely, like, the draw into, like, Clinquant Sky Mage or Aerophage or Chasm Skulker wins. But there's definitely other things you could do, like I said, with Toxic, Thassa's Oracle, you know, Triskaidekaphile, Jace Wielder, Mysteries, Laboratory Maniac, stuff like that. Deck yourself out, mill an opponent. Like, there's definitely other win cons you could run with this. But my main goal was protection and just simple combat, which is why I added in all the counter spells and stuff. So that way, if our opponents end up swinging at us, we can protect our board. With the counter spells, we can protect against removal when we go to swing with unblockable creatures. And it's not as constructed as other decks, but I do think that it's a really fun deck that I highly recommend checking out. I actually own or built a Grazlax deck for my brother, and I played it myself. That thing absolutely shreds in, like, small pods or weaker pods. So I definitely do recommend it. That is all, though, for me this week. Check back next week. We're going to be looking at another clever deck strategy using Bant colors. So thank you all so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. I hope you all have a wonderful day.